Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C., the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Francie Jain. Francie is the founder and CEO of the Terawatt Group, a company on a mission to reduce employee turnover and unlock the full potential of organizations through expert-led group coaching. Francie's journey is a powerful mix of vision, grit, and impact, with over a decade of experience helping leaders grow and businesses thrive. She's showing companies how to build cultures of resilience while saving millions in the process. We'll explore how Terawatt is making coaching accessible while employee retention is more than just an HR issue, and what it really takes to build a workplace where people want to stay. Hi, Francie. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing so well, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to have a conversation with you and see where this leads.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. It's like we're on the verge of spring, so hopefully that'll change in the air.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm just done with the winter.
Yeah, same.
So let's get right into it. Can you tell me a little bit about what is Terawatt? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And okay. And what led you to create it?
Yeah, so it's funny, like the whole creation story of Terawatt is kind of long, so I always try to figure out how I can shorten it. But the long and short of it really is I became aware of a statistic that manufacturing have been going away in America, and millions of jobs have been going away. And I first wanted to see if that was actually true, that statistic. And yeah, somewhere between 5 million and 15 million jobs have been lost since 2000. But that's now at this point, 25 years. But, the idea is just that millions of people who might have wanted to follow in their parents' footsteps in manufacturing no longer have that option. And I was really curious about who was helping them get a new career, because the reason I was curious is because I have often switched careers, and I think it's sort of fun. But I know when I'm doing that, it freaks out my parents and other people. And I was thinking I wonder if that's creates a lot of stress for people. And I was shocked to see that there wasn't. I kept expecting to find something I was calling it the Yahoo of career change, where it would be something free that wasn't maybe great, but good enough that people would be using. And I couldn't find it. And I was kind of starting to get obsessed with this. How does that not exist? Here we are, in America, where the whole thing is boom and bust and it's capitalism and things go up, they go down. How has that not occurred to anyone to start business like that? And so I kind of got obsessed with it. And so it took me a while, but one of the things I realized is I hadn't realized that, but a superpower of mine is career change, apparently, because it doesn't scare me. I think it's fun, and maybe I need to help people. And so I started digging into that initially. So Terawatt was going to be a community, and we were going to help manufacturing workers who had to switch careers, decommissioning military, and stay-at-home moms who are going back to the workforce. And between them, it's a pretty big group every year who are switching jobs. And but the thing is, what I had built didn't go viral, which was one of my plans. And so I thought, well, what if, what these people really need is a coach. And for a split second, I was well, does that mean that I should be a coach? And then I realized, no, I really like the scaffolding and creating the sort of framework. And then I realized, what would be awesome is if we could do some sort of group coaching. And I was envisioning the moms specifically, because I was they don't want to pay a lot of money. They're not working now. but they also can't really leave their house. So what if we did like a Zoom where 10 moms split the cost of a coach that I knew? And so I pitched it to a coach I knew, and she said, "Oh, I would do that in a heartbeat." And I hadn't thought
Mm.
about it, but coaches also need leads. Um, and so then I thought, oh, this whole thing can be a marketplace. And then that's like one of my other superpowers is that like I'm an off the charts extrovert and I love connecting people.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So it's like right at my wheelhouse of like finding, how to connect people and being able to tell everyone how great each other is, and that kind of matchmaker
Mhm.
type role. And so then it sort of evolved from there. But that was really the original idea. It's like really just helping people, truly a company that all we are trying to do is help people find like the heart, like what makes their heart sing. And we're not like selling anything on the side. We're not, we're not a headhunter. We're not getting paid by employers. Like we don't have advertising on the website. It's just truly about like helping people like grow.
Mhm. Got it. Building a company that addresses something as complex as employee turnover isn't easy. What's one hard lesson you've learned in your journey as a founder?
Well, both my journey as a founder and just as a person, I have a really bad habit of like intellectualizing problems and
Okay.
assuming that what I've come up with in my brain is going to make sense to everyone else.
Okay.
Um, and this, I see this all the time. And so like that's one like benefit of like I guess I am sort of an entrepreneurial person. I never really thought of myself that way, but I really do enjoy it.
Hmm.
But the tricky part always is then once you think you have the answer, testing it out. And sometimes even just the
Mm.
testing of something can be hard to do. Like for instance,
Yeah.
like right now, I really think the best people for me to be speaking to are like CFOs and COOs and people really running companies, because they're the people who are really seeing the dollar impact of high turnover from their employees.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and like talking to those people like in a large group is very hard. Like you can't really do that online. And so I think that like that's a big thing with entrepreneurship is the like really the whole thing, right, with entrepreneurship is execution. And so having great ideas is awesome, but it's like when the rubber meets the road, like how do you execute and how do you get the information you need? Like that's almost
Hmm.
where that almost feels like harder a little bit sometimes than like the selling, because you have to prove what your assumptions are.
Yeah. So, what are some techniques or some of the ways you coach or help companies bring down the percentage of employee turnover?
Yeah. So we have this. There's a bunch of information about that, but one of the
Hmm.
things that's oddly not that well known, but that is there's a direct relationship between reducing employee turnover and employers providing professional development to their employees. Um, and but at the same time, I think a lot of people first hear that and they think, oh God, like gross national happiness, like it's going to be so
Mm.
woo woo. How do I know it's going to work? And so then what we really do is like we're able to match employers to experts, and that's like one of our business lines, kind of like Airbnb. But then the other line is really to help them figure out what is the return on investment for that, and how can you track that and connect it to what's happening in the business. And there's science for all of that. Um, and I think so the way that we kind of want to help employers is we basically say to them like, let's come up with a problem,
Hmm.
and then let's then create almost like an RFP, like a request for proposal, send it out to our coaches. We have almost 100, and we think it could
Mm.
be like the whole world. I mean, just that's what we have right now, but it could be millions. And then have them quote, have them bid on it basically, and say, here's
Yeah.
how long it should be, here's the cost. And then what we're able to do is then help them more with the quantitative logistics of
Right.
making it make sense to the CFOs or the finance team or whatever, and having it not be the main thing that I think is the problem right now is that there's budget that's kind of thrown in the way of learning and development, the people within HR who come up with programs, but there's not really a sense of like how to track it, how to quantify it. And HR doesn't, from what I've seen, learning and development doesn't necessarily work tightly with the CFO's office or finance to
Yeah.
think of it as an investment. It's more like
Yeah.
a program that we all need. And if we don't do it, who knows what will happen? As opposed to saying, like, listen,
Yeah.
we did this, we had a return on investment of 150%. Let's see if we can make it better. Let's roll
Yeah.
it up to the company. I mean, that's a different conversation.
Yeah. So I'm listening to you, and the other day I was listening to something online, and this lady was saying that the best way to make more money over time in your career is to stay at a job for less than a year or two and keep moving. Because every time you leave a job, you go to a new job and you can demand the type of salary that you want versus staying at a company for 5, 10 years and making that cost of living upgrade, right? Which, raises are not as high when you stay versus what type of raise you're going to get if you leave and go to another company. How do you deal with that issue? Because I find that like even with the younger generation now, that is a trend. And I'm in tech, and I find that there are certain roles, particularly in tech, where a year, luckily, if you're lucky, if a developer will stay with your company for 2 years, right? Because of that mentality. And sorry, I want you to
No, no,
answer,
this is
but
great. I love it.
I
I
want to
love
add
it.
another point to it. It's not just how much money they can make by moving to another company. It's also about, I'm in a junior position at this company. I've been here for a year. I feel like I should be at a leadership position, and I'm not going to do it here because this company has a structure, and they require a certain amount of experience in order to get there. But I can go into another company and do that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, well, so let's see. I mean, the first thing is, I think that's probably true. I mean, like,
Mm,
listen, but here's the thing, that has to all coincide with a great economy.
right.
So you can probably, for several years, bounce around for a year. I think that at some point, if you want to be seen as a leader or someone can trust, I think you have to stick around a little bit longer than a
Mm,
year spot. So I think it's kind of the question of bouncing around. To me, is a great solution if you're really not having your needs met.
mm,
But I think that, like, the research shows that really when people leave jobs, it's for professional development, it's for managers. And
mm,
so, what I keep saying to people is professional development is what keeps people. And there's like this great Richard Branson quote, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but something like, treat people so well. No, is it something like, treat people so well they won't want to leave,
yeah.
but then you treat them so well that they stay. I'm like totally screwing up the quote, but it's basically the idea that, you basically have to grow people at an employer and assume that there will be an alumni group of people who've just moved up and left, which is a
Hmm.
much better situation than kind of having butts and seats and having just people do like the day-to-day sort of drudgery. I mean, if someone feels like they're growing and maybe they're just making a cost of adjustment, um, raise every year, that may be happening. But I think that, like, if you're also working for an incredible company, that you're gaining
Yeah.
incredible experience. And certainly, like, every single person, I remember thinking that way too when I was much younger, because I was thinking, like, well, I'm not like learning that much, so like, why wouldn't I leave? But
Hmm.
if you are learning and you feel like what you do makes an impact and you're like a real expert in your area, then you really have a real choice. Like, you could go
Hmm.
somewhere else and use that expertise, or you could kind of keep growing with your current organization. And and I think that's sort of the question, because at some point you really do like max out on this 1 year, 1 year, 1 year thing, because it's kind of like a dating thing. It's like a little bit like vulnerability. Like, at some point you have
It's
to a
like a
little bit like,
dating thing.
you know what I mean? You have to be like, are you gonna like want to be in
Stick
this or
around.
not? Yeah. Like, if you have one date with everyone, certainly like you've met a lot of people, but like at some point there's no perfect person. You have to make the perfect relationship. And that's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
with employers. Like, so I think probably mathematically, I think that person's probably quite right. But I would just wonder, like, if you were to track a person like that over their career, what they might say, having done that
Mm.
1 year jump every year, and like what their lessons learned kind of were, because I bet that
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that comes up with it. Like I remember very well when I was younger, and I was one of those people, like I was like desperate to stick it out a year because like places like annoyed me so much. And it was hard with, I remember with headhunters or other jobs interviewing, because after a while people were like, well, you're not really anywhere longer than a year. Like, why would I hire you? And that's
Yeah.
a problem, because
That's a huge
no one
red
wants to hire
flag.
for that. Yeah, exactly. And that's the issue. It's like you have to have a really good story then about why 1 year was the right number at all these places. And so the like genesis story of like your career starts to like come into question if it starts
Yeah.
looking like you're just kind of transactional, because ultimately no one, both employee and employer, don't want to work with transactional people, right? They want to work with people
Yeah.
that are making things better. They're sticking around and they have a
Yeah.
real focus on, I believe in this. And
Yeah.
that's ultimately where you need to fall, you need to land. But I think that the numbers become important when you're annoyed, you're not happy, you know what I mean? I guess that's what I would say. Like I really think if you're
Yeah.
really the place for you and you're having, it's like really working, I don't think you think about leaving.
Yeah, I know that I think I get your point. It's true. I mean, one of the things that I always look for when I'm hiring, if I see a person and I see their job title, if it's the right one that I'm looking for, someone I'm interested in, the first thing I go and look at is the dates of the time they've been at previous companies. If I see a pattern, this person's been here for a year, 6 months, or they've worked at two different jobs at the same time, I'm like, I won't even
Yeah, yeah,
consider
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I
Oh
know
yeah.
that's being a little, but I'm just like, because now I could be the next place that they're gonna be for the next 5, 10 years, but I don't know that, right? So to me,
Well,
it's just
exactly.
like they're just jumping around and they're just looking for the next best thing. I'm lucky if they'll stay here for a year and a half, right? So that's something that first thing I always look at.
Yeah, and I think actually the more I think about what your question is, it's a really good point. Like if you think about it from the other perspective, like the people that we revere as like great leaders, those are not people jumping around jobs every year,
Mm,
right? Those are
yeah,
people that stayed in one spot, grinded it out or ground it out, whatever the expression is. They were just working, working, working until they kind of like made it work. And I
yeah,
think that and that's what, and like maybe I think you're better off actually, actually I'm thinking more, it's not true about the switching, but that has a maximum limit for sure. And then the thing I would say is probably what you're better off if like you really want to maximize your earning potential is probably doing a lot of schooling on the side, doing a lot of
yeah,
skills stuff so that you can, like, that could be a good story. You're like, listen, got a master's degree on the side, and I felt like I really wanted to
yeah,
get into XYZ. My company didn't have it. Like, that's a good story about why you left. And I could really like help these
yeah,
guys. Or then I decided to get an MBA, and this other opportunity opened up that's only available for people with a business degree. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And those are good
yeah,
reasons why you switch, but you have to invest. I mean, the schooling isn't free, but
yeah.
it could be even things like you volunteered at some organization and you got another skill that changed your
Yeah.
trajectory.
And I mean, like a lot of companies now have programs where if you're interested in taking some sort of schooling that's going to benefit the company, they'll pay for it. So,
Oh, yeah, that.
I like what you said. I don't like the word grind. I hate that word. But
Yeah, good
I
one.
get what you mean by it. But I don't think it's grinding. I think it's learning and having
Yeah.
an experience, and it's not just about like you were at this company for a year. It's also like, where's your loyalty at? This company is going to invest in you just like you are investing in it by providing your services. But companies also invest in their employees,
Yeah.
right? And want to nurture them because they don't want that high turnover. So I think it also speaks to like your loyalty. If you're just working 6 months, 1 month, 2 years, a year here and there, and you're just jumping around, doesn't that show that you're not loyal to anyone?
Or to yourself or an idea or some sort
Mm,
of value system. I think that's the more issue that I would have, which is like what are you trying to accomplish? And clearly it's just money, right? Like it's
Yeah.
funny because when I said the thing about grinding it out, you know who I was thinking of was Johnny Ive, who worked at Apple for years before
Yeah.
Steve
Yeah.
Jobs came back. And then when Steve Jobs came back, they created like all these products that turned
Yeah.
Apple into what it is today. And I guess just my point is like, I don't know Johnny Ive at all, but it strikes me that he's someone who's really interested in design, and he felt
Yeah.
he could do really interesting design stuff at Apple, even though that company wasn't very successful until Steve Jobs came back.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that like those are the people I really admire and respect, are people that are in it for something other than the money, because ultimately it's money doesn't keep you anywhere. Because that's the other thing that happens
Yeah.
when you search for money, is that you start to get to this point where you're like, you know what, you can't pay me enough to do this job. And like once you're in that position, like you have a problem, because you need to
Yeah.
find what you want to do, not just you're doing it for money. And so, and those are, you know,
Yeah.
I think all those things you need to figure out for yourself, I guess, you know. But it's a great
Yeah.
question, because I think I think it'd
Yeah.
be a great thing to study, you know, really interesting, like a long-term study of like what, you know, what happened in people and what they learned and what, you know, what's
Yeah.
the but I do think that, you know, you can make a lot more money when you go to grad school. I know that because I went to
Yeah.
business school, and I
Hmm.
remember like the real smart move in terms of financials was going to night business school,
Yeah.
because you're still working. And then you have this new job, and what a lot of people do is they would like have their job would pay for their business school, and then after they had worked the amount of time that was appropriate, then they would leave, and then they have a big jump.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in my 20s when I first started out my career, I was in accounting and I started working at a startup. It was a manufacturing startup. I
Hmm.
mean, my first day on the job was the second day that they opened the shop.
Wow.
And I was actually working half days out in the shop helping them because they were understaffed,
Cool.
and half days in the office like doing accounting. And I just had the opportunity to learn so much about that hustle of this was a startup. Like everybody was doing everything. We were all just running around like chickens with our head cut off, trying to just like get new jobs in the door, get them out the door. And everybody was just doing everything we needed to do. But I was at this company for 6, 7 years, and it gave me the opportunity to like also help them. Oh my gosh, now we're growing. We need improvements here. Let's do this, and like also like learn by trial and error. We had an
Yeah.
opportunity to do that like in a smaller company. And then by the end of it, I was managing their entire operations, and I was running the entire office and just doing everything because I had been there so
Yeah.
early on and learned all those things along with them. And it was because of that experience that I had, and I was going to school part-time, but because of that experience, I was able to get into tech, which I've been in now for over 20 years. But what really ingrained in me from sticking it out in this environment, which was it was not fun. It was fun at times. We were running around like chickens with our heads cut off, but it wasn't always fun. But I also learned that it gave me the opportunity to like just really discover things about myself that I didn't know. So when I came into tech, I started working at this company called Converge, which is a software development company. I now run that company. But I've also had the opportunity to build other tech startups within that company that are
Oh,
now uh, global companies that are part of their group of companies that are within, because they have this environment where they encourage entrepreneurship and building products that become part of this company that the founders who came up with the ideas get to run, but they also have support of this tech company to help them be
incredible.
successful, right? So there's if you stick out through something, there's a lot that can happen if you're involved, and you also don't just come to work and sit at your desk every day. You look for opportunities within that company, right?
100%. I mean, it's interesting hearing your story, because I bet the people, when they saw that this young woman who's an accountant, started like doing the manual thing there. Like they were like, oh, she's a winner. Like this is she could do anything. And I think, by just throwing yourself into that, and you saw someone had a need and you're like, let me get involved, I'd love to help. And like that kind of
Yeah.
can-do attitude is what everyone is desperate for. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like everywhere, an incredible skill to have everywhere. And I think um and I think it's only what's that? There's also another expression about like something about when you're working, like you have to like put into the bank in order to like take away from the bank.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you can't take vacation the first day, right? You have to like create
No.
trust. You have to like create trust and create goodwill, and then you can like, maybe you're a flake one day or you sleep in or. And so the idea is like it's like a push pull of trust and loyalty. But it's funny because loyalty is a funny word because it's sort of like it's not loyalty just based on for the sake of loyalty, but it's you're
Yeah.
treating me well, therefore I'm going to be loyal to you because I feel like this
Yeah.
is working for me. It's like there's a lot of other things like connected, I think, to loyalty. But I think it's just incredible story, an incredible story because it's also you can kind of almost do any job when you have that kind of ability to just like get in and roll up your sleeves because that's really what every job is. I mean, very few jobs, unless you're like a doctor and you have to know specific things. Like many jobs in business are just figuring it out,
Yeah.
you know. And I think like that's the kind of employee you want, and it can be hard to teach, but it also suggests you had really good leadership at both
Yeah.
of these companies, which is really lucky
No, I,
too.
I agree with you. The lead, I mean, yeah, and if just on the my story that I told you, like I think it was because I did have really good people that were managing me and were letting me make mistakes. Like I never had the fear of I'm gonna get fired because I made a mistake. It was just like,
Yeah,
okay, made a
yeah.
mistake, gotta learn from it. How do we keep like I never had that fear. And I also think that's probably one of the reasons why I always stuck it out was because I didn't want to go to a job where I was going to be fearful of like if I mess up, am I going to get fired? That was one of the reasons why I was just like, I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know, so I'm going to stick with what I know.
Exactly. No, and I think, well, it's funny because I think that's also a little bit of like a mind frame of like, there's the like, I'll stay with the devil I know versus grass is always greener, right? There's like the two kind of ways to think about jobs. And I think what I would just say is like, you can kind of get rid of all that if you're just like, what am I here to accomplish?
Yeah,
Why am I here? And I'm here because I really love this ability to learn, to grow, and have people not be yelling at me. I mean, it's a supportive environment for like making mistakes.
yeah,
And like that's like a great reason to stay somewhere. And I can see, and the other thing that I find in myself, maybe the same for you, like I can stay at a place and do one thing much longer if it's always changing. If I'm always
hmm
doing the same thing, whatever it is, I like go bonkers. I can't do
it
the
gets
same thing.
boring.
Yeah. And so you have to be like learning, you have to be solving problems and like, and I think I can see how like as a business owner, as an employer, it can be hard to feel like you have to satisfy everyone's like needs for like what's a good job for them. But that's why I do think like with professional development, I think that's this. I mean, so much comes back to this business because I've done so much reading about it and just feel like this is a really good solution for people because
Mm,
you know, you have if you're able to grow your people, then you're like you have the loyalty, right, faith, because they feel like you're investing in them. But then you're going to have a problem at some point, like as someone was saying, right? I guess too, like
yeah,
maybe you're not able to get promoted the way you like, or you're not growing as much as you like, but and maybe you leave and you get another job, but from the employer's perspective, you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or a year from
yeah,
now or anything. And so you just have to like grow the people you have in the best way that you can and realize that, everyone knows everyone who's a first year hire is not going to be CEO one day.
yeah,
Like that like there will be like some people will rise with the company and some people will leave and some people will drop out. Maybe, weird things happen to people, they go to graduate school or whatever. And so I think that the professional development is just a great way to like stay on good terms with everyone and help everyone like be growing, and also like offering people opportunities that they possibly never had. I mean, there's also this whole,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, so.
Yeah, giving people the opportunity to grow. I get that. So your mission focuses on making coaching accessible and affordable. Why do you believe this is essential for long-term business success and not just a nice to have?
Hmm. Well, so one of the things is in the past that I don't think people really quantified a lot of the learning and development that was going on in terms of what is the return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's become a little bit of a woo woo, nice to have product. But there are ways to quantify it, and human capital investment has a very high return on investment. Um, so what's cool about investing in people's growth is that if you let's say you give somebody a $5,000 bonus, they go and let's say buy a couch, right? That's nice. That's great for them. They got a new couch. But if you put $5,000 into professional development, that benefits the person and the company. And not only
Mm,
benefits the person at work, it benefits the person at home as well. Because you take
right.
yourself wherever you go. So if you become a better communicator, if you are better at handling tough conversations, um, you have more empathy, or maybe you're better on Excel, or who knows what these things are. But it plays into everyone's lives all around. And I think that typically when people don't see the value in it, it's because they're worried it's money not well spent.
Mm,
I think there if you can find ways to track it, in which there are plenty, then it's definitely money well spent, because there's a whole ton
yeah.
of research showing the
Yeah.
impact on human capital investment. And like, or even I'm trying to think, like, I mean, every impressive organization that creates research, like McKinsey or KPMG, or I mean, everyone has so much research on this and how it's, and I think some of the bigger companies have to do it because
Mm-hmm.
the turnover really impacts them. Like, they have to keep people because they really can't afford to keep bumping up salaries for new hires.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that to see it as like a neither here nor there, I mean, if you see it as a non-game changer, is someone who just hasn't seen, I don't think, the benefits of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And here's the thing, right? If you're an individual who doesn't believe in continuous learning and making yourself better, then you're also going to be stuck. If a company offers those things and an employee doesn't want to take it, that tells you something. Everybody has the possibility to learn a new skill. Maybe you're not a great communicator. You can take a course on that and improve it. Or Excel. Excel is like rock. Sometimes if a real person who knows Excel really well, they're like a rocket scientist. I just want to point that out. When you really know how to use Excel, it's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
intense.
right, right.
I took an Excel course like in my young days because I wanted to like know it better, and I'm like, whoa, this tool is like way more than what I use it for.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like, there's so many little things that you can do to just like keep improving yourself. And it could be little things like taking a course here and there, but that continuous learning, it's important for us as human beings, just in general, for just growth, for just relationships. And maybe that's the problem. Like in the company that I work for, like one of our biggest things is we hire a lot of people that are new to the country and their English is not great. So I remember at one point we used to have someone come in once a week with those individuals, and he would work directly with them just to help them not just speak better, but also help them understand comprehension. What you're listening to, how is your brain processing that, and how are you understanding it and reacting to it? Because it's not just about language, it's also about cultures, right? You say something to someone and their understanding of it could be totally different than what you meant. And that, at one point, that was a big problem for us. So we brought and the employees were willing. They're like, oh, this is great. We get to like work with a coach one-on-one to help us with the training of
yeah,
understanding and doing that, right? But if they weren't willing to do it, I can't help them,
yeah,
right?
100%. Well, another thing I would add to that is think about a business, right? there's very few businesses in the world where they just want to just keep stamping out the same widget and doing everything exactly the same as I did yesterday. You
Yeah.
know, the goal of, I mean, some businesses I guess are like that, but like think about it this way: like, are there new markets to go into? Is there like a new product you can create? Can you make it more efficient? Can you spend less money? Can you have different ingredients? There are always questions and there are always learnings about changing and improving the organization. And the people have to live it who are going to then create it at the organization. Like, you can't expect someone to just be like stamping widgets every day and then come up with like billion-dollar ideas. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
they're
for
just like
sure.
being wrote. I mean, you might as well just have a machine do it and have that be automated, because what humans do is make connections and get creative and like connect people and
Yeah.
like figure out like cross department ideas. And like, that's what changes the trajectory of a company.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, I have one more question
Yeah.
for you, but I want to make a comment to that too. Like the world is changing. And even now with the world of AI, for example, years ago when ChatGPT came out, it was new for me. I didn't really know that much about it. So I actually took an online course on how to use it. And I know that might sound silly because you just ask it questions, but if you really want to use it properly, you have to learn how to prompt it and all these different things. So I took a course for it. And now, one of the biggest things that we use in our everyday jobs is AI. So there's an opportunity to go to your employer and be like, hey, I want to learn how to use this tool better, so that I can continue learning more about AI and using it. And even now, like there are people that will send me things and I'm like, that was done in AI, but they didn't prompt it properly. They just spit out the first
Yeah,
answer
exactly.
that they got. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's so much more to it. So if you take the time to learn, or you learn through your company, it's a huge benefit, I think.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I think what's so cool about AI is it's almost like learning in real time, because we're all
Mm-hmm.
kind of getting better every day by every day. And so, the other day my husband was saying to me like, "Well, how much do you use AI?" And I was like, it's like the first draft of anything I have to write that's more than two sentences." You
Yeah.
know, I- and like, for and still even now, like sometimes I'll just take it and they'll give me a first draft and I'll like, spend a lot of time on it. And then other times I'll like do all the prompting. Like I'll say like, oh, okay, this is in the voice of a CEO who's also really approachable. like, or like, don't use emojis, or this is for a LinkedIn post, and I just think the synthesis of what's at its fingertips is incredible.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, I bet your next thing, I think my next thing is definitely like how to make it almost like AI bots,
Yeah.
where you're having like someone, it's almost like an assistant, like they do something, they learn
Yeah.
information, they do something else, and then there's like information spit out to you, so that like it's just completely automated.
Yeah.
In a way, it's like we're creating our own like specialized software.
Yeah.
Um, and so I
Yeah.
think that that's like the next thing we're all going to start to get good at, is figure out like how that works and like how to do
Yeah.
it, because
Well,
yeah.
one of the things with AI too is that a lot of people take what it's giving you, they'll modify it and then use it. But one of the things you should do is when you take it and you make your own modifications, you feed that back. You say, this is my final draft after I took what you gave me and I modified it, and this is my final. You send it back so that it knows what
Oh,
modifications you
smart.
made and
Oh, right.
understands you, so that the next time you ask it to
Oh,
do something, it's
yeah.
understanding why you made those modifications and what it sounds like, and the changes that you made in between. So now you're feeding it to learn more about you. That's one of the key
Oh,
things to do. A lot of people don't do that.
no, that's so great. That's true. I don't, because typically what I do with that kind of thing is I will send it back, but then I'll say like, hey, can you fix any typos or rewrite this so it's like
Yeah.
grammatically correct, and or can you make this better? There's a lot of like critique I like from the AI, but it's funny, I haven't really
Yeah.
thought about like knowing me as a persona and writing in
Yeah.
my voice. That's it makes a great point. Yeah, great point.
Okay, I have one last question for you.
Okay, yeah.
What advice would you give to founders or leaders who feel stuck managing constant turnover and low
Mhm.
engagement? Where can they realistically start?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the best, so the thing that we're always trying to do with people is to create like a beta, right? Create a program with one group But before you do that, identify a similar group, and so that you can sort of track the changes.
Mm,
And like it can be hard to do in business because there may not be two groups that are like exactly the same. But even if you can't do the control group thing, like that's an ideal way to track it and to really get like information about what's changing. You can also do it over like a time sequence, whereas you
mm,
could say, this is what was happening in the company April 1. These people, this group got coaching, for 2 months or whatever the thing is. And then here's what was happening at the end of that next quarter or whatever. And like you might be able to compare it to like the year before, or like has anything changed in the
mm-hmm.
organization like that was not forecast or something like that. And I think surveys are really helpful with that kind of thing. So the first thing I think that everyone should do is start to like get better at professional development is really just have like really good surveys of their employees and
Mm-hmm.
understand
Yeah.
what they want, what they feel they need, because that's also an incredible way to get any kind of engagement, and then to act on it. So
Yeah.
like that's our first thing that we always do is take a survey. And I think everyone should become expert at surveying their employees for different things and then showing them the results, and then giving them maybe even options to like vote on things that reflect their interest from the first survey. Um,
Yeah.
and then, and I think small trials and small ways to measure, and you can, another thing that's super cool that people do is come up with super specific metrics for their company or their group or whatever that they can point to as a sign of change.
Mm,
Like we do a lot in hospitals, and like some of the really unusual metrics that you can track as related to professional development is like sick days or patient experience, and all these kind of like, second or third derivative events that are happening, but they're still related to how well
mm-hmm.
people are functioning as an organization. And and they're also accounting measures and stuff, right? So I just think the more that you can survey and track, those are probably the two main things, and just find small ways to get started. Like you said about ChatGPT, like that's an incredible insight. Like I didn't take a class in ChatGPT, right? I just did a bunch of like listening to experts on panels, and
Yeah.
even we did a workshop, but we didn't do. Somehow I didn't remember the thing about having them know my persona, but yeah. So my point is, I think you just sort of have to start small and just think about like how you can track it in a way that um, that's statistically relevant and the way that
Mm-hmm.
numbers people find to be valid.
Love it. Well, Francie, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and your insights, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Sonia. It was a lovely chat. And yeah, thank you so much. Continue good luck and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
I want to thank Francie for joining me today. Her insights on leadership, coaching, and building resilient organizations are a reminder that when we invest in our people, we transform our businesses from inside out. If Francie's story resonated with you, or if you're a leader looking to reduce turnover and spark meaningful change in your company, make sure to connect with her and learn more about Terawatt. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, growth, and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and connect with our community on social media. I'd love to hear your feedback, so leave a review and let me know what topics you'd want to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace challenges, adapt with tenacity, and keep pushing forward. Keep growing, keep pivoting, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.